The invasion force moved through the dark edge of human space with confidence. Their ships were large, heavily armored, and built for domination. For many cycles, they had expanded through nearby systems without real resistance. Every species they met either surrendered quickly or disappeared after a short struggle. But there was one strange detail that kept returning in their records. Ships sent into human territory never came back. At first, the commanders did not take it seriously. Space was vast. Failures happened. Systems broke. Pilots made mistakes. That was the simple explanation they preferred. But as more reports came in, the pattern became harder to ignore. Entire scouting teams vanished without sending a single message. No wreckage was ever found. No signals were ever recorded after entry. It was as if human space swallowed them completely. Still, pride pushed the invasion forward. The leaders believed humans were just another small civilization hiding behind distance and silence. So they sent a proper fleet this time. Large ships, advanced weapons, and experienced crews. Their mission was not just to explore anymore. It was to claim. As they crossed deeper into human-controlled space, something felt wrong. The stars here were mapped, but not fully understood. Some navigation points seemed slightly off, as if the region itself was shifting in small ways. Sensors picked up faint signals, but they were inconsistent. Sometimes there was nothing at all, and sometimes there were too many signals at once. The crew began to notice small things. Communication between ships had tiny delays, not enough to cause panic, but enough to create unease. Instruments that had always been reliable started giving readings that did not match. Engineers checked systems again and again, finding no clear failure. Yet the problem continued. On the bridge of the command ship, the atmosphere grew heavier. The commanding officers tried to stay calm, but even they could feel it. This space did not feel empty. It felt watched. Every movement of the fleet seemed to echo into something unseen. Then came the first contact signal. It was not a greeting. It was not a warning. It was a short burst of data that appeared across multiple channels at the same time. No one could trace its origin. It simply arrived, sharp and precise, as if someone had been waiting for them to get close enough. Moments later, a distant object appeared on long-range sensors. A human vessel, small compared to the invasion ships, almost unarmed in appearance. There was no panic on the alien bridge, only expectation. They assumed it would flee or be destroyed quickly, but the ship did not move away. It held its position in silence. The invasion force repaired their weapons, confident this would be the first real step in taking control of human space. Yet, for the first time since they entered this region, uncertainty spread through the fleet. Something about the stillness of that lone human ship felt less like weakness and more like preparation. The silence between the fleets did not last long. The invasion commanders gave the order to engage. They expected a quick result. One human ship alone was not supposed to be a threat. Their weapon systems locked on with precision. Energy weapons charged. Missile bays opened. Every officer on the bridge believed the outcome was already decided. But the human ship still did not move. Then, without warning, it changed position. It was not a normal acceleration. There was no gradual motion. No clear thrust pattern. One moment it was there. The next moment it appeared slightly to the side, as if space itself had bent for a fraction of a second. Several crew members blinked, thinking it was a sensor error, but the readings were correct. The ship had moved in a way their science could not fully explain. The invaders fired anyway. Bright energy bursts crossed the dark space, aimed directly at the human vessel. For a brief moment, the commanders felt relief. Nothing could survive a direct hit like that. The weapons were too advanced, too powerful. But the light faded, and the target was still there. Not untouched exactly, but not destroyed either. The human ship seemed to absorb the impact in a way that was hard to understand. Some of the energy simply vanished. Some scattered harmlessly into space. Only a small portion seemed to connect, and even that did not stop the vessel's movement. A quiet tension spread across the invasion fleet. Then the human response began. It was not a loud attack. There were no massive explosions or dramatic signals. Instead, systems across the alien fleet started to behave strangely. One ship reported loss of targeting data. Another reported navigation drift. A third lost contact with its rear escort without warning. Confusion spread faster than damage. The commanders ordered a full scan of the area, but the results made no sense. The human ship was still visible, still in front of them, but now there were faint echoes of it in other locations too. Multiple sensor ghosts appeared, each behaving slightly differently. It was as if the ship was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then the first invasion ship went silent. There was no explosion, no distress call, just a sudden cut in all communication. One moment it was part of the formation, and the next it was gone from all systems. The remaining ships tried to reestablish contact, but there was nothing to respond to. Panic was not immediate, but it was growing. The fleet was designed for war, not confusion. Enemy fire they could handle. Loss of visibility they could adapt to, but this felt different. It felt like the battlefield itself was shifting around them. The human ship finally moved again, this time appearing closer than before. Still calm, still steady, almost like it was observing them. Another invasion ship vanished. This time, several crews saw it happen. The ship did not explode. It simply disappeared from their screens, as if something had removed it from reality without warning. The commanders began to realize something uncomfortable. They had entered human space expecting resistance. Instead, they were facing something they could not track, predict, or fully understand. And for the first time, their confidence started to crack into something much harder to control. The invasion fleet was no longer confident. What had started as a simple engagement had turned into something they could not explain. Ships were disappearing one by one, without explosions or clear attacks. The formation that once looked powerful was now breaking apart into uncertainty. The commanders ordered tighter coordination. Every ship was told to stay close, to share data constantly, and to report even the smallest change. They believed control could solve the problem. But control meant nothing when information itself was breaking down. Communication channels started to fail in strange ways. Some messages arrived delayed by seconds. Others arrived twice, slightly different each time, as if somebody had copied and altered them in transit. A few messages never arrived at all. One ship reported that its navigation map had changed without input. Stars that were marked as fixed reference points were suddenly shifted. The crew tried to correct it, but every adjustment led to new errors. It was as if space itself was no longer stable. Then the second wave of losses began. Ships on the outer edge of the formation simply stopped responding. No warning, no signal, just silence. When the remaining fleet tried to scan their positions, there was nothing left to detect. It was not even debris. It was as if the ships had been removed completely. Fear started to spread through the crews. The commanders tried to maintain discipline. They ordered weapons-ready status, full defensive formation, and continuous scanning. But every action felt less effective than the last. It was like fighting something that did not follow normal rules of space combat. Then came a new development that made things worse. Several ships began reporting false readings of human vessels. Not just one anymore. Dozens of small signatures appeared across the battlefield. Some were close, some far away. Some moved, others stayed still. The problem was that no one could confirm which signals were real. The fleet opened fire on multiple targets, trying to eliminate the threat. But every time they fired, the results were inconsistent. Some targets vanished. Others remained unchanged. And in the confusion, more ships went silent. The commanders realized something disturbing. The human presence was not just one ship anymore. It felt like an entire system of control was active around them. The battlefield was being shaped in real time. A damaged invasion cruiser finally managed to send a partial recording before its systems failed. The recording showed empty space where one of their ships had been moments earlier. No explosion, no impact, just emptiness. On the bridge of the command ship, silence fell. The crew watched the data repeat itself again and again, unable to accept what they were seeing. Their fleet was not simply being attacked. It was being erased in pieces, without clear cause or visible force. The human ship was still there, but now it no longer felt like a single enemy. It felt like a signal, a control point, a warning that they had entered something far beyond what they were prepared for. And for the first time, the invasion force stopped thinking about victory. They started thinking about survival. The invasion fleet was no longer acting like a force of conquest. It was now acting like a group trying to survive in unknown conditions. Every decision felt slower, heavier, and filled with doubt. Inside the command ship, the highest officers gathered for emergency analysis. Screens showed missing ships, broken formations, and corrupted sensor data. No one spoke for a while. The pattern was too disturbing to accept easily. They had entered human space expecting resistance. Instead, they were facing something that did not behave like a normal enemy. One of the engineers finally spoke. The losses were not random. They followed a pattern. Every disappearance happened after a short delay in communication or a shift in sensor alignment. It was as if something was watching their systems closely and acting the moment weakness appeared. That idea made the room even more silent. The commanders ordered a full internal scan of all ships. They wanted to confirm there was no hidden failure in their own fleet. For a brief moment, hope returned. Maybe this was a system-wide malfunction. Maybe human forces were not even involved in the way they thought. But the scan results removed that hope quickly. There was no internal sabotage, no shared technical fault. Each ship was functioning normally right up until the moment it stopped responding. The pattern pointed outward, not inward. Then another fragment of data arrived from a surviving ship on the edge of the formation. It was unstable, broken, and partially corrupted, but it carried something important. A recording of space just before contact was lost. The video showed a human vessel, still calm and steady, but around it, faint distortions began to form. Not weapons in the usual sense, more like shifts in perception. The space around the target seemed to fold slightly, then correct itself. The next frame showed nothing where the invasion ship had been. No explosion, no debris, just empty space. The recording ended there. On the command bridge, the realization began to settle in. Whatever was happening was not simple combat. It was controlled removal. The fleet was not being fought in the traditional sense. It was being reduced step by step in ways that avoided clear detection. Then came a new development that changed everything again. Multiple ships reported receiving a shared signal, not a weapon signal, not a warning blast. It was structured communication, organized, calm, almost patient. It did not demand surrender. It did not threaten. It simply transmitted information. The commanders hesitated before decoding it. What they found was not a message of aggression. It was a list of previous expedition entries into human space. Each entry matched ships and crews that had disappeared earlier, all marked with the same final status. Contact lost after entry. At the bottom of the list was a new line, their fleet designation, not as a warning, not as a threat, just recorded. The meaning was clear without being spoken. They had been observed from the moment they entered. Every move, every signal, every mistake had already been accounted for. The commanders finally understood something they had refused to consider earlier. Human space was not unmonitored. It was not empty, and it was not unprepared. It was managed, carefully, quietly, and without rush. The human ship remained in position, still silent, still unmoving. But now it no longer looked like a target. It looked like the center of a system that had already decided how this encounter would end long before the fleet arrived. The command ship drifted quietly through the darkness. It was still operational, but it no longer looked like the proud leader of an unstoppable fleet. Around it, empty space marked the places where powerful ships had once traveled together. The surviving crews sat in silence, waiting for orders that no one seemed ready to give. The commanders reviewed every piece of information they had gathered since entering human space. The answer had been in front of them all along. Humans had never hidden because they were weak. They had stayed silent because they did not need to prove anything. They knew exactly what entered their territory, and they knew exactly how to respond. The human ship was still visible on the main display. It had not chased them. It had not celebrated. It simply remained where it was, watching from a distance. That calm behavior unsettled the visitors more than any weapon ever could. One officer suggested launching another attack before leaving. Another quickly disagreed. They had already seen enough. Every attempt to force the situation had only made things worse. Pride had brought them here. Pride had cost them almost everything. The commander looked around the bridge. The faces of the crew had changed since the journey began. They had arrived believing they would make history by expanding their empire. Now they only hoped to return home with the few ships they had left. A single message was prepared. It was not a threat. It was not a demand. It simply announced that the fleet was leaving human space and requested a safe path to the outer boundary. For several long moments, there was no reply. Then a short signal appeared on every screen. Safe route confirmed. That was all. No victory speech. No warning. No celebration. The navigation systems suddenly cleared. Strange sensor readings disappeared. Communication delays ended. The stars matched the maps once again. For the first time since entering human space, everything felt normal. Slowly, the remaining ships turned away from the silent frontier. No one spoke as they crossed back toward open space. Every crew member looked back one last time, expecting to see the human ship following them. It never moved. When the fleet finally reached friendly territory, the commander submitted their report. Many leaders refused to believe it at first. They questioned the missing ships, the strange events, and the decision to retreat. But the evidence could not be ignored. Every recording, every damage system, and every survivor told the same story. The report ended with one final recommendation: do not invade human space. Years later, new explorers often asked why no fleets were sent toward human territory anymore. Older officers never answered with fear or anger. They simply shared the report and let the silence speak for itself. The mystery that had puzzled so many civilizations was no mystery at all. No one returned from human space because humans did not fight for glory. They fought only when they had no other choice. They protected their home with patience, discipline, and quiet confidence. Those who arrived in peace could expect respect. Those who arrived seeking conquest discovered a lesson they would never forget. From that day forward, the edge of human space became known across the galaxy as a one border that wise travelers crossed only with friendship, never with arrogance.